Alright, so say you just finished up your trapping season, or you're a predator hunter, you just started predator hunting, you shot a nice coyote, nice bobcat, and you don't want to sell it, you want to get it tanned. A lot of, even if you're a deer hunter and you shoot a nice pretty bobcat and you want to get it tanned, I'm a trapper myself, and so oftentimes in the current market right now, fur prices are not great, and typically on smaller items, fur prices are usually lower, even in good years, depending. So a lot of times what I'll do is try to have things tanned that I know aren't going to bring a good price on the fur market. And so that's what I'm going to show you, kind of the way I prep things for sending them off to tanning. It's pretty easy. The first thing you have to do is flesh them. So you've got to get all the fat and meat. If there's anything left on the hide, you need to get all the fat and meat off. And there's plenty of videos that show you about fleshing. I use a knife. As a trapper, I've got a fleshing beam, and I use a knife, a fleshing knife, or I've used a pressure washer, depending on if it's a big beaver or something like that. And I think there's a lot of videos, folks, pressure washing deer and things like that, fleshing them. So there's videos you can find. It's just you're scraping off any of that excess, real obvious fat or meat that's still on the hide after you skin it. And then once you get it there, you want to roll it in salt. You can, if you're a trapper, you can stretch things on stretchers and send them to the tannery stretched and dried like that. But you can also, it's a little more convenient, easier to ship if you just salt them. So all I do is I get mine from Tractor Supply, but any feed store is going to have some stock salt, and it's just pure white salt. It looks like a big bag of table salt. And I've got me a salt bin here that I just keep, and I just replenish my salt once I start to get low. And I'll bring you over here and show you, but I roll my hide in that salt over and go over every inch of it, make sure I've got salt coated over the whole thing. Then I'll roll it up and I'll put it in a cooler or something separate. And I'll show you this too, but it's helpful to have, because that salt's going to draw the moisture out of that fur, that hide. And so you need to have it where it can drain, because there's going to be moisture that's going to come out of it. What you want to do is leave it in that salt rolled up like that for a couple days. Take it out, shake all that old salt out, make sure you drain off the moisture, and then resalt it. Roll it back up and put it in there again. Usually after that second salting, most of the moisture is going to be out, and then really that hide can be kept until you're ready to send off to the tannery, and it can be kept months like that, salted, as long as it's salted good and you didn't miss any spots. One thing, if I know it's going to be a while before I send something, even if it's salted, if I've got the room, a lot of times I'll throw it in the freezer just as kind of a secondary precaution, just to make sure that everything stays good. But if you're wanting to send something to a tannery, and no offense to taxidermists or anything, but I don't, unless you're wanting some kind of specialty rug or something like that, if you're just wanting a fur to hang on the wall or throw over the couch, I don't recommend sending it to a taxidermist. Most of the time they're going to send it off to get tanned anyway, and they're going to way upcharge you. And I did a podcast on several different locations that you can, I'll link to it in the video, but several different locations where you can send your fur to have it tanned at a very reasonable price, just for like a wall hanger type scenario. So, but then you can roll it, you can box it in just a regular shipping box, and ship it off, and you're good to go. So I'll bring you over here and show you how I do that. Alright, so I got my salt here. You can see it looks just like table salt, and you can see some of the older salt that I've had, because it's going to start, you'll get fur and fat and stuff in there. But I'm going to throw my hide. Got a nice gray fox here. You can see you'll have some of this membrane. That's not necessarily the fat and the flesh, so that's okay as long as you get a good, but some of this stuff you can see here, that's a little piece of flesh and some fat there. That's the kind of stuff you want to get off. A lot of times on gray foxes, coyotes, bobcats, that stuff's not going to be that bad, but on beavers, otters, raccoons, they're going to have a lot of fat that you need to be careful about getting off. And then all I'll do is I like having a dedicated bin like this, because I can lay it in there, so as I'm doing one side, the other side's getting salted too. Now I always flip it just to make sure I get a good coating, and you want to especially watch around your legs, because that can be bad about folding over and missing a spot. And if you don't get a spot salted, it will rot. And then carry all the way out your legs The ends of your legs are bad about rolling over sometimes, so I always try to press those out and make sure they're good and coated. Then I'm gonna flip it, and like I said, the good thing about it, always, especially around the head, you got your ears and your eyes and your nose, always make sure I give a good dousing there. Just give it a good rub down, and then I'm gonna hit the edges again. And then your tail, it's very important that you split that tail all the way out so you can open it up and see the actual hide itself. Because any place that you don't split, it's almost impossible down here at the end to get, if you didn't split it, to get anything, you know, any air or salt down here, you're gonna wind up with your tail starting to rot. You're gonna wind up with a tailless fox. The rest of the fur is still gonna be fine, but it takes away from the appearance of your fur if it's missing a tail, trust me. All right, so that's, I've got, and then what I like to do is I'll kind of lay them out, throw a little handful on the head, and then just roll it. Just kind of roll it up. And then we'll go to the next step. Next step is to leave it and let it drain. And you can see here, this is old cooler. I usually try to keep it in a cooler, ideally a cooler with a drain plug already in it. But you can see I've got a coyote and some coons in here, and you can see the water that's drained off of them. So what I'm gonna do is set these hides out, set them to the side. I'm gonna dump that water off. And what I'll do is you can kind of see the wetness, the wet salt. Make sure you can see here. I'll take these hides and I'll shake them out. Get all that old wet salt off, re-salt them, then roll them back up and put them back in here. And I want to lay this thing on a slant at an angle to try to let any of that water drain off of them again and let the hides get good and salted to dry out. So that's what I'll do. Like I said, I'll go ahead and re-salt these, and I'm gonna put my fox along with these back in here, let them drain off for a couple days, and then they'll be ready to hold, or if I want to send them to go ahead and send them to the taxidermist then they'll be good to go.